Welcome back to the Innovative Accountant Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Coquell, and we have a wonderful guest joining us today, friend of ours that's dear to our heart, Bryton Udy. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to be on this side of the camera.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we're gonna talk a lot today about marketing, mindsets, and CPA firms. You know, sometimes sales is the dirty word and marketing's a little bit of the dirty word as well, but we're going to spend a little bit of time understanding how is marketing changing, how is branding changing in the world that we're in. There's a lot of disruption and things going on, and we've got a great guest with Bryton here. I'm going to share a little bit of his background for our audience that doesn't know Bryton. I've known him for probably pushing over 10 years. It's been my real pleasure to get to know Bryton. He's a character that's full of energy, positive energy all the time, very creative and very driven. And so I'll share some of the accomplishments that Bryton's had and why he's the perfect guest for this conversation today. So Bryton, he's the founder and CEO of At Heart Creative, which is a marketing company that helps businesses, entrepreneurs establish their brand, execute their marketing strategies. We're going to get into that as we go through through our time today. He's also the co-founder of Tillin, which I think is an amazing platform, online philanthropic platform that was near and dear to your heart. So We'll talk a little bit about Tillin as well, Bryton. You're a host similar to what we're doing here today with the At the Heart of It podcast, which talks about life, celebrates creativity, champion entrepreneurship, and gets to the heart of the why behind what we do. Yep. So I would encourage all of you to check that podcast out. Bryton does an exceptional job on it as well. Was a co-founder of the Well Brewing Company. So, you know, he's got a brewing company in his repertoire, which is great. And he's not just skilled as an entrepreneur and, in the business world, but he had a lot of success and achievement before he joined the business world in sports and music, a junior A goaltender in the BCHL. I think he played with a few different teams there for a couple of years. Obviously, music is near and dear to Bryton's heart. For 8 years, he was involved in a Canadian country music duo called Leaving Thomas that he helped create. They ended up signing a record deal with MDM Recordings, have released a number of amazing hits and some even reaching the top 20. So a very interesting career, Bryton, and all at the young age of 28. And I don't think it's getting any slower because as I understand it right now, you're in the middle of a new home renovation and you're expecting your first child.
Yeah. Still busy. Always busy.
Not going away.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say if it's not busy, it's a little boring. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Well, and really, Bryton, that was sort of the place I wanted to start this. Firstly, just give the listeners a chance to understand your background. It's been really interesting to follow and the real clear decisions you sort of made as you went along to go, I'm kind of done with that chapter. I'm going to try this now. I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
But where does that drive come from? Let's talk about that. Where do you get all the energy from?
Yeah. Where do I get the energy from? I don't know. I've always been a big believer in kind of following your heart, following your gut. And that has honestly been the reason I've made the bigger decisions that I've made in the past of, growing up as a kid, I want to be an NHL goalie. It was always being a goalie. I was weird from the beginning, apparently.
I think you got to be a little bit a goalie.
Oh, 100% you have to be. I will be the first to admit that. But, when I got to, when I was 18, 19 and going, I don't want to do this anymore. Like it was just a really weird epiphany and going in my gut, in my heart, looking into the future. If this is what I keep doing, that's not the life I really want.
Lots of travel on the road, away from people that you care about.
Absolutely.
Lots of things, right?
And then not to mention, it was as a goalie, your lifetime as a player is a little bit longer. So you've got, 5 years of college and then 10 years in the minors. Right. And then if you even get a chance at the 30 spots in the NHL or 32 now, I guess, that actually have a chance to play every night. Like that was not, the vision I had for myself, and went, I want to go to business school and I want to pursue music because that was something that was always a passion and something that was fun and I enjoyed doing, but it was never really a career thing for me. So the first thing I did when I quit hockey was I'm going to buy a ticket to the CCMAs, the Canadian Country Music Awards in Edmonton, and then, apply to business school. And those are kind of going to be the two things that I focus on for the next period of my life. And, here we are looking back. I would not change any experience for the world. hockey, learned a lot, and same with music. But
yeah, we'll talk about your music in a moment, because I got a funny story I want to tell there too. But I loved hockey growing up. I never got to the level you and most Canadian hockey players don't, right? To get to a junior A level and play, especially as a goalie, and being the center of attention. You screw up. You got the fans. So, like, I'm sure you had games where the fans were on you. Like,
oh yeah.
What did that teach you? Like, obviously, handling pressure and dealing with that is been a big part of that learning. Yeah.
Well, I know somebody that you dressed up as for Halloween would say it's the memory of a goldfish. As Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso. Yes.
Which was a great costume, by the way. But I think that really is the mentality. Both, it's the discipline of training and being a team player. But I think especially from a goalie's perspective, the mental toughness of that position is really, really a big part of it. If you worry about a goal that you just let in, and that's what's on your mind the whole time, you're going to definitely continue to let more in, because that's all you're thinking about. For right. Sure. And so that, to me, that resiliency, that focus, that determination, and mindset going into whether it was music or business now, just to be able to think about things in a certain way that are more productive, positive, and have a bit of a short memory for mistakes that are made, and learn from them right away, and then kind of move on and focus on the next thing. But that would definitely be the big thing.
And the teamwork part of it too, right?
For sure.
You can't win hockey. It takes everybody. If you're getting 100 shots a game, well, it's going to be tough, right? So I'm sure you learned a lot about that in terms of role playing and how that works. And
and how to communicate with a team too. Yeah. Like, I remember, it's not my finest moment, but I remember it so clearly. It was a game in Trail. I think we were tied, and it was 30 seconds left, and there was a 2-on-0 that came back. And I went in the dressing room, rip it. Like, I was so mad, yelling at the team, and the coach was like, no. You're as responsible as everybody else here too, right? Yeah. So it's, being able to have those learnings and come into, a workplace and think about, how to communicate with other team members has been,
how to motivate people, get them working together.
Totally.
And especially in marketing, and, you're working with, we're going to get to accounting firms and marketing in a moment, but how everybody has a role to play in that story and that brand. And,
absolutely.
So let's talk about music. Let's shift gears a little bit.
Sure.
It takes a ton of, I love music. I'm terrible at it. Anybody that knows me knows that, but it's just been interesting to watch that evolve, Bryton. Like, I know you come from a musical family, but when did you realize you actually had real talent?
I don't know. For me, it was more of an escape for a long, long time. Like, if it was after school or hockey, it was for me to be able to learn a song on guitar or piano and sing. Like, that to me was just, I could escape from whatever, daily grind I was going through at the time. But for me, like, my parents met studying musical theater. So music was always in the house. We were, did the piano lessons, singing lessons. I was in a musical with both my parents when I was in grade 3. Like, it was just always around. And so for me, it was always that escape, that passion, that fun thing to do. And when I started thinking about it, I was like, man, it'd be like, I wonder what it would take, or what it would be like, or what the industry is like if I tried to make this a career. Like, what does that actually look like? Mm-hmm. And the music industry, like any industry, is very unique. It's very relationship focused. And, at the end of the day, it is a marketing business. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much all it is, 100%. So, when I was getting my marketing degree, what I thought was really interesting is I was able to use, some of the learnings that I'm learning in the classroom and trying different things and actually applying them to our brand as a band, and, kind of learn by fire, and see what worked and didn't, and kind of learn and evolve and kind of get some of those real world experiences under the belt by being able to apply that directly to the music at that time. So
it's so interesting, right? You hear all these stories of amazing musical talents that go nowhere.
Right.
that never get a recording contract.
For sure.
You know, they just are constantly grinding, but they got amazing talent. And
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are very talented for sure. But I think when I first started noticing Leaving Thomas in your band, it was because of the marketing content, like the little videos and the social media and the different things that you guys did. How much of that would you say was the reason you ended up where you did and where you started getting contracts?
Right. Yeah. It was, you know, I was fortunate, funny enough, my duo partner, Annika, got her accounting degree. So she had the numbers and the financial stuff all taken care of, which was fantastic. And then I was obviously getting my marketing degree. And I remember a conversation with the head of the label, MDM, when we signed with them. We were on a radio tour, and I kind of asked him, you know, what was the decision? Like, what was kind of what was the piece for you that went, okay, I want to get into business with these guys? And he's like, the one thing, it was an easy signing for him because we had the branding figured out. We had the marketing figured out. We knew who we were. We knew what our sound was. We weren't, you know, trying to figure it out or waiting for somebody to tell us what we needed to be, is we knew it. And fortunately enough, the music was there too. But it was big. And I think the big thing is we wanted people to like us for us, not just our music. So being able to build out that personality a little bit more and share that through, you know, I think we had 3 pieces of content that went out every week. We had a kind of
strategy.
Yeah. Right. So we had our New Tune Tuesday, which was just a cover that we would do for a minute. We would do our LT show, which was kind of like a vlog, kind of blog thing. And then we had our podcast that we started doing there too. And it was just trying to pull the curtain back on who we were and, you know, allow fans, I guess, to get to know us better and hopefully enjoy the music as well.
So my funny story, I believe that perception is reality. And so, you know, I remember early on and when I was watching, because obviously the family connection with David and your dad. And I remember sharing a couple of your videos with at that time, my young daughter, who was probably, I don't know, she might have been 10 or 11. And she thought that I knew a famous person. She's like, you know Leaving Thomas and you know that guy? And I was like, yeah, I do. So I actually have tried to absorb some of your fame there.
That's hilarious. I've been trying to transfer any of.
So if you can impress a 10 or 12-year-old in today's world with that kind of stuff, I think you can impress lots of people.
Yeah,
so
that's hilarious.
Anyways, it's a testament. I think you guys did a wonderful job getting
Appreciate that.
And obviously great music. Loved your tunes. Getting to the top 20 in the charts. That's fantastic. Like that must have been something.
Yeah. I mean, the experience of that was huge. I mean, and the relationship we were able to build, funny enough, like, you know, the lovely man behind the camera, that's how we met, which, you know, those relationships have built into a lot of relationships that we've been able to do work with for clients in the marketing world and business world now. But, you know, we actually met, Oliver and I are kind of the video guy. We met doing the music video for Blame It on the Neon, which was our most successful song. And like that ended up being played on CMT in the US and crazy. Like played on Sirius XM. And those are the things that, you know, I will never ever forget. But, you know, it was the same thing as hockey, is kind of moving on from that industry and going, that's again, looking down the road, seeing behind the curtain of many other artists, like what do their family lives look like? What do their day-to-day lives look like? And go, that's not my personal definition of success. So, you know, how can I make sure that my personal priorities are taken care of instead of just, you know, the music side and the kind of the passion.
I mean, I think it speaks to your values and what's important to you. You know, I was always impressed with that because, you know, when I was following you as you went through that, I always understood that you probably could have carried on and been a great goalie and had a career and played goalie and done well.
Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe. I mean, you were doing great, you know, and then you kind of went, no, I'm going to move. This isn't quite the fit. You moved into the music, which was always a passion, still is. Yeah. But, you know, then there was a point too where you're like, I see something bigger for myself and what I'm doing. And, you know, and so that trigger, let's talk about that because you did make that transition. So the entrepreneurial side, let's talk about At Heart.
Yeah.
So how did you make the shift, decide that, no, I'm going to jump into the marketing space, start consulting, share that story.
Yeah. So I actually started At Heart directly out of university because we were still working on Leaving Thomas. And For me at the time, it was a way for me to be in charge of my own schedule, my own time, and, still work in the business space and serve clients and all that kind of stuff while pursuing a career in music. So, anybody that's tried to pursue a career in music, you're not making, loads of money off the start. So, both Annika and I had our own things that we were working on the side, and then we would come together and write, record, tour, the whole thing until, that started kind of developing. So that's honestly how At Heart started. But for me, the more time I spent there, the more fulfilled I felt helping clients kind of transform and feel more confident in their businesses and more confident serving their clients and communicating how their services or products actually transform their clients' life or their customers' lives. And that definitely snowballed. So for me, when I got to that point of going, being on the road 200 days of the year, not being home with, for me, kind of wanting to be the best husband and dad in the future that I could be, that's not really probably the role that would allow me to do that. But I really do love being able to work with clients and learn about their business and how, to better communicate that and still flex that creative muscle doing, podcasts or videos or rebranding logos and design work like that, all kind of still folded into that creative side of things. But being able to add genuine value to a client, to me, was the thing that was almost missing someone in the music side. Sure, you get up and it's almost a little self-indulgent at times when you're on stage and you're singing your own songs and it's kind of all about you. Yeah. But that feeling of being able to give something to somebody else, whether that be advice or a new logo or a video or whatever that can help them, that coming back, I think, was definitely more, fulfilling in a different way, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's cool just how it's all fit together for you. You've always been a creative person,
right?
But I think, learning through playing hockey, you're the center of attention as a goalie. You got to market yourself. I'm sure those interviews, you're like, oh, how's this going to go, right?
Exactly.
So you got to get good at handling that. And then the music side. And, I want to circle back, like MDM, working with them. I mean, these are companies, that's what they do. They promote. Right. So what were some of the biggest learnings you took away from that experience?
Yeah, I think the one piece was the relationship side of things and understanding how important networking and developing and continuing to develop relationships in any industry are. That was definitely for both Annika and I, like, it was the country music industry. They always call it a small family, especially in Canada. So you go to the CCMAs every year and everybody knows everybody. And the first thing I did, obviously, is I went to the CCMAs in Edmonton when they were there and spent the 3 days there just shaking hands, meeting as many people as I could. Awesome. But that was the biggest thing, is going, okay, well, if we can partner with somebody that can open up some more doors because they've got them on their cell phone, and that ended up leading us to meeting executives at Sony in Nashville or Universal in Nashville or Warner. Like, that was the big piece for us that we didn't have. And to be able to partner with somebody that had those relationships and that network and could help us in that side, was really the opportunity there, for sure. But
and I've seen you carry that that concept into the work that you do with companies, being able to experience that firsthand with you, whether it's through accounting firms or our wealth management firm or others that you've dealt with, that it takes a village.
Absolutely.
And being able to bring in creative people. Hiring all the creative people in one company is tough to do.
It's pretty tough.
You got to follow the talent to some degree. Yeah. Like if you need a voiceover of a British accent, you might not have that guy in the company. So we had that experience. That was funny with the Jelf video.
Absolutely.
And different things that, creative things you've done where, we had to outsource and we had to find different pieces. And, so very, very cool how it all goes together. I want to pivot a little bit now, and we talked about that. Obviously, you've got an entrepreneurial spirit. I think that sits in your family, just knowing your background. How many companies are you involved in today? So let's talk, because I know there's Till and I know there's At Heart.
Sure.
So talk a little bit about what you're doing entrepreneurially.
Yeah. So currently active in 2. Tillin is a fun one. It's a philanthropic charitable platform. So we're trying to make fundraising as easy as possible for the average Joe. My wife actually has worked her entire career in the charitable space, and I've heard her come home multiple times and go, I spent all day trying to set up this fundraiser with this tool and it didn't work. Or, the organizations that's trying to fundraise, just, it's not working. And, the spark of that company was actually trying to solve a fundraising hockey tournament fundraising issues for them, and was able to leverage connections that I had in the marketing world that I had worked with on different projects, and went, how can we make this better? And then, through our conversations, it just kind of snowballed from there, and went, man, we could really,
make it bigger.
Make it bigger, exactly. And how much of a bigger difference can we make in the world, which, is again, a core value for me, is being able to give back. And that's always been a big part of our family too. So how can we do something that makes a bigger impact by leveraging the skills and resources that we have? And so that's kind of been Tillin up until this point. So that's been really great, and partnering with other people there. And then At Heart, obviously.
Before you jump in, so Tillin, it's very, very cool that's values based, and you're because you think of how tough that's been, right? Especially through the pandemic, and fundraise, all these auction events, golf tournaments, different things, and how people are raising money. I mean, even you look at what's happening in Canada today with some of these protests, and how much money they're able to raise online, and different things. So the world has changed a lot, and you guys taking a creative approach with an online piece that, and I understand, just by going through the site, that you can actually give to whatever charity you want. There's very unique ways to kind of build that community around giving, which anyways, kudos to you. I think that's well thought out and executed. So happy to see where that goes, and the impact that makes.
It's a fun project.
Sure. So At Heart, let's come back to it, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And then what I want to do is I want to segue back to kind of the theme here on marketing and accounting firms, and just what the real idea is here, what we're talking about. But so At Heart, we've talked about you building community. You're focused on helping businesses of all kinds. Let's talk a little bit about your process. So when you're bringing in first let's talk about your ideal client. Like what clients do you like to work with?
Yeah. Personally, it's the owner operator. Like, I love working with those small business owners that are in the trenches. They really know their business front to back, and they're typically at a size where they may have an admin person kind of posting on social media or sending out a couple emails, but they're at that point where they're able to kind of take that next step and go, we've maxed out our capacity internally to do any, marketing to the degree that we can, and really want to take that next step. And that's been fantastic. And I mean, it's very similar to marketing firms in the sense that, they're some of the ones that we're working with right now, 2 to 3 partners internally.
Right.
And they're looking to kind of take that next step and elevate the reputation of their firm. Right. But they just don't have the capacity to do that. So that's kind of where we love to be.
You're helping them focus their time on what's most important for them, which
Absolutely.
is likely their other business. Instead of being marketing machines, they're gonna actually go do what they know best.
Absolutely.
And create that space and capacity for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool. Your process. So looking at your site, so At Heart Clarity Framework. Talk about that. Like, what does that consist of?
Yeah. So going through working with a bunch of clients, I always tried to get a firm understanding of what their brand was, who they were, what they stood for, what their values were, which ended up leading to creating our own branding process. So we call it the Brand Clarity Framework, and it's a three-part process. The first part is we get down to the spirit of the brand. So I like to think of a brand as almost a person, right? It's a separate entity that has its own spirit, its own personality, and its own story. So those are kind of the 3 sections of that branding framework. So in the spirit, we're really figuring out what is the why of the business. What is their purpose or their cause that they're really after? Their core principles, their superpowers. So what sets them apart from anybody else in their space from a competitive standpoint? And then really identify what their perfect customer is. If they have, I typically pose the question of what is their favorite customer or client to deal with? And if you could have 100 more of those, what do they look like? Because then we can market to that person when we're creating materials and strategies and content, as we can direct it to that individual. Then we have the personality, which is kind of the voice of the brand. So how do they interact? What is their demeanor on social media? Or, how does a client or a customer interact with the brand as a whole? So one example that I'll use is Wendy's on Twitter is completely different than A&W on Twitter. And Wendy's is just known for being kind of, tongue in cheek and poking fun at other fast food brands, but no other fast food brand really does that. So it's just their own personality as a brand.
Yeah. Okay.
And then, the final part is the story. So, that story, is not actually about the brand. It's about that perfect customer. So that perfect customer is at the center of that story. And the client ends up being the guide. So the simple example, my favorite example is if you're a Star Wars fan, Yoda and Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi are going to be the client. They're going to be, for the example of this, the accounting firm.
Right.
And the client is going to be that Luke Skywalker. They're trying to go through something. They're coming up against challenges. They're trying to accomplish something, and they're feeling a certain way. And it's the firm's job as the guide or Yoda to give them the tools, the plan,
to help them be a hero.
To help them transform into that hero, right?
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, that's kind
everybody loves movies.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, and I mean, it's a great analogy, right? Because you look at the movie industry and how they're keeping people entertained and engaged in something that's moving forward.
Yeah, and it's somewhat formulaic. Like I believe it was Archimedes who created kind of the first framework of a story that's been the framework for hundreds of thousands of stories from then. So we kind of base it somewhat off of that, because that's how we consume information, right? Is stories, and it's the easiest way to communicate an idea to somebody else. So
yeah, no, I love that. So I mean, having a process is critical, right? You've got to be able to help your clients. If you're good at marketing, you're helping your clients understand this is what we're going to go through, and this is sort of where the value lies and how it's going. So that's as expected. You've got that nailed. Let's shift gear here and kind of get into the meat of this. There's a ton of disruption that's going on in the world today.
Absolutely.
Right? It doesn't matter what industry, business you're in, innovation's changing, technology's changing. We've got a pandemic in the midst of all of this that's causing business owners to struggle with how they're going to reinvent themselves, tell their story a little differently. There's just so much going on. And I guess I'd start with that and saying, how is that affecting the work you do?
Yeah.
How is it affecting the marketing industry in general?
Yeah.
Is it creating greater opportunities, greater challenges? What are you seeing?
Yeah. Well, I would say over the past 2 years, one of the craziest things is, the objections of I don't need to be online are almost completely gone. Like it's crazy, right? You think of being locked inside and the only work that you can do is on your computer or on your phone. If anybody's shopping for anything, it was online, right? Unless you're going to maybe the grocery store, but even then you're ordering online to have it delivered to your door.
You look at Amazon and Shopify and all these companies, right? And where they're at.
Yeah. So the objection from clients of, oh, I'm a local service business, or I'm a local shop with great real estate. I don't need a website, or I don't need to create content for social media. Like those objections are almost completely gone. Which is great for us. But, I think the next question that comes from clients that may have not previously thought about is, well, where do I start? And, it doesn't have to be diving in head first into the world of online sales necessarily, but being where the attention is, which is online. It's on Instagram, it's on LinkedIn, it's on Facebook, and being present there and having your say and being top of mind for clients and customers, like that is massive. Because if you're not, then somebody else is going to be taking, like, again, the example with an accounting firm, your clients are looking for information about what you do, and you have that knowledge. So if you're not sharing it with them, they're getting it from somewhere else.
Right.
And that opportunity for an accounting firm to position themselves as a thought leader and, use an integrated advisory term, that trusted advisor, or that guide, if we're talking about the story, you're missing out on that opportunity because somebody else is going to be, could be a 14-year-old kid talking about crypto, right? Like on YouTube, that's the piece. So, if you're not there, providing that added value and that advice in that space, somebody else is going to be doing that, right? And that's where your client's attention is going to be when they're not necessarily in your office sitting down at a year end or tax season, right? So
sure.
It's definitely a big change for sure.
You mentioned mindsets change. Like some people they're not there, but now they're getting there. And I think as a CPA professional, we're seeing that evolution. But I use a kind of a funny joke. I had a friend that used to enter. We had two friends. My one friend owned a funeral home.
Okay.
And so I was the tax CPA. And so this other friend, anytime he used to introduce us, he would say, there's only two things or two people you need to know that are certain in life, and it's these two, and it's death and taxes. So that's how he used to introduce us, and everybody would laugh, and we'd always shake our heads a little bit. But so the tax one is funny, right? Because that's a pretty standard joke, and taxes are like, it's guaranteed, you owe them. You're gonna get, like, it's like accounting. You just have to do it. It's there. And so I think as a profession, for a long time, the mindset has simply been that the work's just going to keep coming.
Right.
We're going to just get referrals. They're coming in. It's easy.
Yeah.
We grow. We don't have to really worry too much about it. We probably have more than we can handle. But I think that's changing. And so I know you've worked with a number of CPA firms that are clients of yours. How are you, those traditional mindsets, where are they? Like, are accountants still very conservative? Do they hate that M word or the S word with marketing and sales? Are they evolving? Are they getting clear online? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I would say for sure the kind of the stigma of, or the accounting mindset of the stigma of marketing and sales is definitely still there. I think if you think of a decade or two ago, content was and marketing was so sales and pushy focused. Right. It was about, this is what we do, this is why you need us. It's not so much that anymore. Like, the focus really is on adding additional value to what you do and doing that in a way that isn't sales focused. It's a small rule that we use is an 80-20 rule. So 80% of the content that you share should be value add. It shouldn't be sales at all. It shouldn't be asking for anything. It should just be giving value. And the firms that we've worked with, some of them were doing that already and doing a really great job. And especially through COVID, sending emails out and going, hey, this is some of the policy changes or programs that are coming out. And they were adding that value on their own and clarifying any questions that their clients may have. Others, we've had to kind of coach them through that. And they were, only talking about making sure you come in and at tax season, or here's how to prepare for a year end. But that really has been a really great change to see in the mindset of many accountants, of going, it's not all about being pushy and being salesy.
You can do it professionally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think the other thing is the over professionalism a lot of times. I think, you've mentioned to me a couple times too, is just the very conservative nature of accountants. They just want to be as professional as possible. But at the same time, if you're really wanting to trust that advisor, you kind of open up and you have a bit more of a personal relationship with them. And Again, the accounting client was mentioning to me that one of his clients was going through, or his wife was going through a really, really tough, health problem, and he turned to his accountant because that's the relationship that they had, and went, how can you help me through this? Like, I don't know where to start. And it's like,
as you're talking about it, I'm just sitting here laughing because you're using the Star Wars story. And I'm like, it'd be like, well, which guy do you want to be, Yoda or C-3PO?
right. Yeah.
Yoda's interesting, right? Like,
that's true.
There's some emotional thing there. And whereas C-3PO is kind of robotic and right. So
and very conservative. And I don't think you should do that. Yeah.
Sort of the guide, right? But which
hilarious.
one do you choose? You probably be more attracted to Yoda. So, but it's interesting how that's changing. You spend a lot of time helping people with websites and different pieces like that to help them tell their story. And, I have sort of themes I see, but what do you normally see when you're looking at their external content, how they actually present themselves? You talked about over professionalism. How does that show up?
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways that it shows up. I mean, almost any accounting site that I've seen is just so focused on the services. I mean, any accountant, from my understanding, they all pretty much do very similar services. Obviously, you kind of get into specializations and stuff like that. But it is all about what they do. It's not about how they help their clients transform into something better. We're all looking to transform, every single one of us, all the time. I mean, my story as an example, like going from a hockey player to a musician, like I wanted to transition into something else, and now into business. Everybody's looking for that next stage and that next evolution, and we work with businesses and buy products that help us get to where we believe we want to be or who we want to be. So when I look at websites, if you're just talking about just the services you provide, you're not telling the whole story. Like that's
accounting, audit, tax, corporate advisory. Like if that's kind of now, there's places for that. They need to understand what you provide.
Absolutely.
Your comment is the way they're telling a story that resonates with clients doesn't connect with them personally.
I would 100% agree with that, and I think it's the emotion is missing. Like, we're emotional creatures as human beings, so. If all you're talking about is tax services that you provide, you're missing out on the opportunity to actually get to the root problem of solving the anxiety or the feeling that client may have. They may be worried about tax season. They don't know how to prepare, or they didn't set enough aside in their business, or they're the example of a client, like their wife is going through a medical issue, and there's business pieces that he just doesn't have time or capacity to take care of. Like there are emotional pieces that we can speak to, and that's what's actually going to grab the attention and make somebody get off their butt and actually call or book an appointment or sit down for a meeting. Like that's definitely the piece that's missing. So that's honestly, we take that story that we work through in that brand clarity framework, and that acts as the foundation of the copy that we put on websites or one-liners that we use in videos or anything like that, because that's really the foundation of that communication framework.
The other thing I'm sure you deal with in firms is just their time. So you'd mentioned earlier in our discussion here that companies evolve, accounting firms are no different. It starts off as a sole practitioner that's trying to do everything, chief cook and bottle washer, doing it all, right? Like they're trying to do it all, and then they get another partner and they build some team, and they start to then go from generalists to specialists. And but what I always find interesting is one of the last things that kind of gets added is marketing.
Right.
It's kind of counterintuitive, but they tend to sort of grow in certain ways. And so a lot of the firms, if you're dealing with a 10, 15, 20 partner firm, chances are they have marketing departments, but they still even need resources.
Right.
And then obviously the smaller you are, the less time and capacity that they generally have, right? So what do you like? What kinds of things are you helping CPAs with? How are you looking at their opportunities to grow differently than you would another industry or type of client?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, that's where we always start with the brand clarity framework, because we want to sit down and get a really clear understanding of what their brand is about. I mean, we have a pretty decent idea of the business. Obviously, we want to get an idea of structure and who does what and all of that. But sitting down and understanding who the business is kind of where we start, who the brand is. And then from there, we're able to create content independently and kind of away from the CPAs and the partners, so they're not actually having to spend time
hours doing it. Yeah.
Spending time creating a blog or posting on social media. Like, we're able to take all of that away and allow the client to be as involved as they want. So, I mean, we've got one client that, I pretty much talk to on a quarterly basis and sit down and go, this is where we're at. These are the changes we're making. Is there anything you want to add? No. Okay. Then we'll see you next quarter. And then we've got another accounting client that does like to be a little bit more involved. They, did a charitable, kind of campaign with another company in town, and they took a photo of a check presentation. They flipped that over to us, and now we're going to post it on socials, right? Like, that's kind of the spectrum.
Yeah, so you can work with
absolutely
people that have very limited capacity to those that have a lot. And so let you talk about content, and then we keep coming back to that. So what are sort of, if you look at marketing and branding, let's talk a bit about what's the difference. So branding, marketing, how do you define that today?
So for me, the way I define it is anything that has to do with branding is done in order to build a desired reputation that you want for your company or your business. So, that's why you pick certain colors for your logo, or what your logo looks like, or the typeface or the font that you use. Those are all kind of the aesthetic pieces. But then it's the story that you tell. It's the personality that your brand has. It's all building a desired reputation. The marketing side of things is how you're communicating to your clients or your customers how you can change their life. It's the communication piece. And so that kind of comes...
the execution of getting the brand out there and the strategies of how you're actually going to share that story.
Absolutely. So the branding piece, I mean, I always say, is like the number one rule in branding is consistency. So if you are trying to build a desired reputation, you need to be consistent in doing that. And then you also need to be consistent in the marketing side of things. Of if you're going to do, a monthly podcast, you better do it monthly, right? Yeah. And not just say you're going to start and then do a couple episodes and then it weans off and it's done, right? Yeah. So that's definitely kind of the difference. If brand is building that reputation, marketing is actually, that communication of that impact that you can make on somebody's life, which then at the end of the day builds the reputation of the brand as well. So they do work in tandem, but they are slightly different in the definition of those two words for sure.
So let's the types of marketing. So we got radio, TV, websites, social media. Like, when you think of all these things that companies can do and accounting firms can do, like, what makes sense in that today for most groups you're dealing with? How has that changed? Like, social media has really changed a ton of approaches, written content versus audio versus video.
Yep.
Like, what do you see today as the core pieces that companies or accounting firms need to be focused on?
It's a great question, because I have still seen a lot of dollars invested in traditional marketing. I believe there is definitely a time and place for that, but the whole game of marketing is trying to figure out where attention is. And I can tell you that attention isn't really on TV as much. People are watching Netflix, they're watching Disney Plus, they're like they're not there. They're streaming, right? They don't have to watch commercials unless you're watching a sporting event, which you'd think this Sunday, that's going to be the one time that it's those commercials are $1 million and they're still probably undervalued because of the amount of attention that are on them. Same with radio. There's not a ton of attention there. Newspaper or newsletters that are in the community.
Hard copy magazines.
Exactly. Yeah. Like the attention is not there. Where attention is and where everybody is nowadays is social media. Love it or hate it. That's where the majority of the attention is. And I think especially for, B2B businesses, LinkedIn is the place to be. I mean, it's what we primarily focus on for Wealthco for sure. And it's where I push all of the accounting clients towards, because when you think of social media, Instagram is probably like your living room, right? If you're thinking of it as a place, you log in there to connect with friends, see what's going on, similar to Facebook. LinkedIn is kind of the office to an extent. If you think of it as a place, you're going to show up in a business mindset, and you're going to be consuming content from a business perspective.
That's why people get annoyed if somebody shows up in their jammies on
exactly.
LinkedIn. It's not meant for that.
Right? So that's where we try and focus, right? And at the end of the day, it's free. Yeah. You don't have to pay for space like you would in a magazine or a newsletter or a newspaper or radio ad. It's the ROI on that time or I mean, money invested if you're hiring a third party to do it is definitely there, because that's where attention is. People are in that mindset for business related content. And 100% that's the place that I would recommend pointing any accountant at this time, is share something valuable, share something that you think your clients or prospects might be interested in or want to learn from you. And because you're a knowledge expert, share it and type it out in a post and see what happens. It's definitely kind of the mind shift that is starting to happen. It surprises me often that there's still money invested in some community newsletters even sometimes, because I've got one that comes to my door every day or every week, and it's thrown in the recycling bin, right?
Yeah.
So
people absorb that content a lot differently today, and
for sure. Yeah.
So the accounting side is interesting with that. So is that sort of, just hearing you talk about LinkedIn, social media, would you say that is the one sort of key thing that professionals, CPAs are focused on today? Is that where everybody's generally channeling their marketing dollars and time into?
I don't think it's where everybody is, but I think it's where a lot of people should. I look at the opportunity for somebody like an accountant who is an advisor to take the approach of what conversations are you having in client meetings? And obviously you don't share personal information in those client meetings or on social media of what you're having in those conversations in client meetings, but share some of the advice to your community on LinkedIn and invite your clients to follow you there. We talked about, a lot of accountants still rely on word of mouth or referrals. How can you supercharge that by sharing valuable information that your clients may not have on their own, that then they can go to their friend that they go for coffee with that's also an entrepreneur, that they said, yeah, you should read this article that my accountant wrote or my accountant shared, or this video that they did, and this information that's super valuable to me as a business owner. And then that's an opportunity for that friend to now become a client, right? Yeah. It's not just, somebody sees a post and goes, I'm going to be a client of that company. It's somewhat more complex than that, but I would definitely say LinkedIn is that opportunity that I think there's a lot of accounting firms that just aren't taking advantage of, for sure.
So a lot of professionals, whether you're lawyers, accountants, investment people, financial people, they're all trying to become the most trusted, and they're trying to help people simplify their lives.
Right.
But really, if you think of what they're selling, it's knowledge. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, this race to be a knowledge leader, and I think that, at least in our experience, that we're seeing that mindset shift, that we can't, we can provide knowledge one-on-one when our clients are talking to us.
Right.
But if we're truly going to be disrupted, we're growing, we need to grow or we're dying. We have to look at how we're positioned through marketing and being that knowledge leader.
Yeah.
And so are you, that's obviously a key part of where you see marketing strategies going and how you're
100%.
supporting firms.
100%. Absolutely. Yeah. We're not focused on, like I said, kind of that 80-20 rule. 80% of what we're wanting to share for any client, regardless of industry, but especially kind of in the knowledge space, is going 80% is sharing that knowledge. It's providing that additional value.
Well, I think what's so interesting, like, you know, when you're an accountant and you're tapped for time, and then your marketing department says, go write an article on these recent tax changes. And you're like, how do I, like, I know there's great firms, like, you know, kudos out another podcast guest we had here, Kim Moody, and Moody's in Alberta here. You know, how they're able to execute on a knowledge leadership and sharing content, and how that brand really resonates when companies do that. But that takes a huge commitment and building capacity. And sometimes that we always feel like we need to do it ourselves. When in reality, really the value is often, it doesn't matter if you share content, even if it's somebody else's content.
It's true.
And I think that's what we've been learning in this, is it doesn't always have to be your own.
No, for sure.
And so are you, you're finding out that's resonating? Because I think 100%. As accountants, we feel like, no, it's got to be right, or it's got to be ours.
Well, I had this conversation with a client last week, is when, you know, if somebody shares something that you think is valuable, immediately you can make it your content by sharing it and adding your 2 cents. Like, it doesn't have to be, you know, writing a 500-word blog or 1,000-word blog, or sitting down in front of your computer if you're not wanting to be on video, or, you know, doing a podcast. It doesn't have to start there, and it doesn't have to be there. It's just, if you can be a source of valuable, credible, you know, knowledgeable information, and be able to communicate that, then you're marketing and you're doing a good job, right? So 100%, I don't think you don't need to start there by any means.
Well, I think, you know, we've even learned that on the Wealthco side, and working with different people like yourselves and others, and, you know, even just getting in front of a camera, because as professionals, you know, accountants have a ton of knowledge.
Yeah.
But sitting and writing it all out, like, that's painful.
Yeah. Or where do you start?
Right. So, but being able to create content that's easy, where you get it out and it's maybe visual, and being then able to leverage that content across, you know, you can now take snippets of it and use it 10 different ways, instead of thinking of it as a written document that is difficult to sort of leverage. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's, you know, we call that, I kind of borrow the term from Gary Vaynerchuk, who's really kind of the bleeding edge of social marketing. But you know, that pillar content model really is focused around creating one piece of valuable content. And I would even challenge, you know, any listeners going, if you create one piece of content a month, that is yours. And whether that be a video or a podcast or a written blog, do one a month, then you can break that down into 8 pieces of content. Post those 8 pieces of content twice a week. So, like, you know, you've got a month worth of content there
out of one,
out of one piece, right? And I mean, we obviously at Wealthco, what's fantastic is, you know, over the last couple years, we've got a lot of pillars going on now, but I think the main one was this podcast, which was great. But every time you sit down, record an episode, we're breaking that down and creating multiple pieces of content that we can share out, and we've got a couple weeks worth of content, right? Because you had one conversation, we were able to capture that. I think it's the exact same philosophy if somebody's more comfortable with writing or more comfortable with audio or video.
Well, the people are going to absorb it the way they want it. So you can convert it into different things. Like, for example, doing a podcast and converting it into a written script and sharing that. There's lots of different creative things you can do there.
Absolutely.
You know, now, how much is too much? So, like, we talk about, you know, we talked about earlier about the sales word, and it can't be salesy and not pushy, and it's got to come across the right way. Right. But you also hear from marketing people that unless people hear something 7 times, there's usually a magic number of how many times they've got to do it before, you know, they're going to take action. What's your view on that, and what kind of pushback do you get from the accounting community
Sure.
when it's sort of like this feels like all of a sudden we're going too fast, too quick.
Yeah.
What do you see there?
I would almost pose the question back and go, if you think of your experience, going through a website, if you see a button 7 times, do you actually see the button 7 times? I would argue that you don't, because you're not consciously looking for it. And I think the rule that you're referring to is like that rule of 7 studies have shown that it takes us, 7 to 8 times at minimum to hear something or see something for our brains to consciously actually comprehend of what that is. So that's why we will repeat parts of a story, parts of a communication, certainly calls to action, right? Like if you're on a website and you've got a button that wants you to, book a meeting, we'll throw book a meeting on there a few times on the same page. But from a question of how much is too much, I would argue that I don't think an accountant with the capacity that they have could reach too much content. I honestly don't believe they could.
Yeah, as long as it's quality content.
Absolutely. And that is the thing, is as long as it is valuable and it is quality.
Yeah, if it's quality, then it's not going to be annoying, and it's not,
Yeah.
so that's got to be the key for sure.
Yeah. But I definitely would argue that you could have too much sales conversation really quick.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you're posting,
come to us and we got the best.
Exactly. Every day.
Yeah.
Then it's going to be like unfollow, because that's not why people look for information on social. So,
So let's wrap up this section. I want to kind of segue it a bit, but we see the professional, we see accountants around the world. They all have a bit of a uniqueness to their story, but there is also some consistency to the story.
Right.
The guide hero story that firms are trying to tell. What are those sort of key parts to that you're seeing in working with firms? Like, how are they trying to position themselves?
Yeah. I think those that are doing a great job, coming back to positioning themselves as that guide, right? So I'll use myself as an example. I'm a business owner. I to be perfectly blunt, failed accounting the first time in university. So as a marketer,
it's right, left brain.
Exactly. So it's like, I know that I need somebody that I can trust to help guide me through some business decisions that I just don't have the knowledge for or the understanding of, which makes me feel kind of anxious or stupid or whatever, right? Like it's just those internal feelings and that internal voice. So what I've seen some successful firms do is I don't want to say the word capitalize on it, but they leverage the emotional side of that story and make sure that they're paying attention to what their clients or their business owner clients might be feeling, which they might be feeling alone. They might be feeling confused. They might be feeling overwhelmed. And when they start to talk about that and provide empathy and show empathy, that they understand how they're feeling, and then position their services as part of a solution in order to help them feel less anxious and more confident in their business, that's when I see
the time to live the best life they want to live. And
exactly.
You're integrating their whole piece into that.
Absolutely. Right. So bringing together and simplifying the complex is always a really important story to tell. I truly believe that accountants are, I've experienced it, kind of one of the best poised professionals in order to do that, especially for business owner clients. So that's where I really see that success coming into play is positioning their services as part of a solution, but really needing to articulate the problem first and show that they understand what their clients may be feeling or going through before they talk about how their services can be that solution.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
So resources, you've got mentors, you've got people that you reach out to for, to learn more about marketing and creative ideas. Yeah. What sort of resources do you have at your disposal that, our listeners might be able to take advantage of or take a look at? What do you look to?
Yeah. So, there are a couple. I mentioned one earlier, Gary Vaynerchuk. he's kind of all over the place in the sense of he's like part entrepreneur, kind of what's the word, influencer to a degree. But a lot of his business conversations and content is really, really great. He actually runs his own marketing firm called VaynerMedia, and he's just got so much content, but it's all really great, entertaining, and he kind of documents his life in that way. But he's really awesome. Donald Miller is great. He kind of wrote a book called Building a Story Brain, which is fantastic, but a lot of the focus now is business made simple, and he's got some really great resources there that couple courses. But I mean, personally, like at the heart of a podcast, although it is, getting to the heart of the why behind what we do, I've been fortunate enough to interview some pretty cool people that from Olympic athletes to promoters that have put on shows for Carrie Underwood. It's fun to learn from kind of different
Successful people.
Absolutely,
and what they're doing to do
so
it. Yeah.
I selfishly enjoy doing that because I get to learn from people that I admire too. So
well, you mentioned books and different things. As you know, I always ask our guests what they're reading. I'm always curious about that. It's been something that I've gained a lot of value out over the years of people I know. And is there anything that you're reading these days that's made an impact on you, or that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, I don't know if it's overly valuable to the people that are listening right now, but I'm listening to a lot of fatherhood books right now. Like I am.
You should be.
I should be. Yeah. So I'm a big audiobook guy. I'm dyslexic, so reading is just not my forte. Yeah. But so audiobooks are my favorite. I mean, the Matthew McConaughey book, Green Lights, is awesome, but the audiobook is even better because
he's doing it.
He's doing all the accents and stuff. That one's awesome. But I think like two of my go-to books, one is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I feel like many people know about that book. It's a fantastic one, and it's short, but super powerful. And then the other is the complete opposite, which is Principles by Ray Dalio, which is a very, very thick book. Deep.
But so many great things.
And I love that he positions his work principles and his personal principles, right? And he is able to kind of combine the two. And for a guy who's as successful as he is, it's pretty cool to be able to get a window into his brain of how he's thought and made decisions over his life. So it's pretty cool.
Very cool. Good recommendations. I would encourage you, if you haven't read them, to read those. They're fantastic. Yeah. So just in wrapping up, Bryton, if our audience wants to learn more about you, learn more about At Heart, what's the work you do, what's the easiest, best way that they can sort of reach out to you and do that? Yeah.
So probably easiest place is at heartcreative.com. Pretty much everything is there, and we've got a little contact form if you wanted to reach out and have a conversation. Or my personal email is Bryton, Bryton, at heartcreative.com. So
awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks, Bryton. Thank you so much for taking the time with
us today.
Thanks for having me,
Tim.
As always, I always enjoy your energy, your contagious smile, and it's been very valuable. And so on that note, thank you. And that ends the latest edition of the Innovative Accountant Podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you enjoyed the time with Bryton Udy.